Hello. We've switched up the scenery, but this is for Luke chapter 8 discussion questions. So we started with the parable of the sower, and I went off on how that looks in real life. And so the question to ask yourself is which one best represents you, right? Are you in abundance? Are you living in the 30, 60, 100 fold? Are you the tree that isn't getting choked out, that has deep roots, and is willing to endure to bear fruit and then keep going, right? Not get stuck on the merry-go-round again, but continue to grow and continue to mature, meaning that when you have fruit, you sow that seed, and then there's more trees with more fruit, right? And you get to this place. That's what true yielding, true surrender is. And that's how you get more, right? You get more by becoming more. When we think, oh, I want an abundant life, we think of all the possessions that we're going to get, but the wealth comes from within. The abundance comes from within. The way you're going to get more is by you continuing to sow and produce more and produce more and produce more, right? And so, anyway, are you the person that when you hear the word of God, it's in one ear and out the other, right? The first seed, it doesn't even take root, right? You've tried to read the Bible over and over again. You go to church, but it's just not sinking in. Are you the second seed where you hear the word and it sounds good and you like what it says, right? It gives you some hope. But when you get tested, when it's time to prove in life application and actually applying what you've learned, right? Having faith over fear, choosing to forgive or, serving others, loving your enemy, some of those things when it comes to putting it into practice, do you uproot? You're right. Do you wither away? Do you not have any depth? You don't have enough depth to actually endure through. And so same thing, your tree doesn't get planted. You've sown the seed, but then when you realize that what you would say is that it's getting too hard and then it's like a quitter mindset, a quitter mentality. But when you get pressed and it's time to reveal and birth, right? Bring forth, start to emerge what's within, start to grow, start to mature, that you run away from it, right? And you go back to the merry-go-round. Or are you the third seed where you've seen some benefits of faith and you've started to see provision and protection and you've gotten to where you're self-reliant. You've put your security back into the things that you've earned. You either have, and it basically comes down to your financial relationship. You either have worries, where it's like you try to control your finances. You have fear of provision. You've put it back into your own hands and you try to control. Or you are indulging in your wealth, right? The pleasures of the world and right, the deceitfulness of wealth, where you're like, I have enough. I have what I need. I have it all. I don't need God. I don't need to put myself in this place of sacrifice anymore. I don't need to be yielded and open to the Lord for him to flow through me. Like I gave enough. I gave a little bit and I got some in return. And so like, this is where we stop. Like I said, it's like the building the house on sand. You end up building the house, but it's not reliable. It's not secure. And you've stopped pulling from the root system. And so you're not actually letting yourself get to the breaking point where you're going to bring forth fruit. And to realize that the 30, 60, 100 fold is when the wealth of the world that you've gotten, right? You have a healthy relationship with provision. You don't have a fear and scarcity mindset when it comes to your finances. You don't try to control, right, outcomes. You don't try to, at that point, say, oh, it looks like I can take the reins again. Like, thank you, God, you've gotten me this far. I have dealt with this so many times with girls in relationships, is they realize that they cannot seal the deal and they can't even get started. They can't even get anything off the ground. So they turn to the Lord and they start to pray. And it's all the things of like prayers for my future husband and fasting and, okay, God, I'm going to try it your way. I'm going to get off the apps or I'm not going to chase or whatever. And then as soon as they start to get what they wanted, as soon as someone asks them on a first date and they start hanging out with the person, then they think, oh, okay, I'm going to take the wheel again. And they go right back to all their old ways. So they started with the Lord and then they took the wheel back in their own hands. That would be the best way, I would say, is the third seed, is you start with the Lord, you trust him to open the door. And then once you're walking through the door, you want it for yourself again, versus realizing you've got to finish with the Lord for yourself to come out and get the true outcome, right? It's in that place of still staying surrendered, because what happens is we start to see the Lord giving us what we want, and then we grab it, we grip it. So we're in an open, yielded place, surrendered. We're like, okay, Lord, you can have it, whatever outcome. And then we start to see the outcome. And rather than that growing our faith and being like, oh, the outcome is happening. Yes, Lord, you're so faithful. I'm going to continue to trust you. That when we start to see it happening, we close our grip again. And we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose it now. And the Lord's like, no, you're going to need to let me finish, which means like have a loose grip on it, be willing to lose it. He's not going to take it from you, but it's almost like investment, right? Anyone that understands investment, that has a healthy relationship with money, knows that like you make money and you sow that seed back in, and then that seed makes you more, and then from that fruit you sow again. There's this cycle of you continue to sow. So as the Lord is producing the fruit in your life, the willingness to let it go is the willingness to sow it again, to sow more seed, not just sow one seed. And then when you start to get what you want, grab the fruit before it's ripe and take it off, right? It's like, I've said this before, there's this little video and it shows a guy and a girl, they each sow a seed. And then one of them, the first fruit that they see, they take it off the tree and the tree dies. And then the other one is patient and they wait, and there's one fruit, and then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have a whole tree. And then the other person's coming and it's like, wait, can I have yours? And it was like, you had that opportunity in front of you, but you quenched it, or not quenched it, I guess, like quenched it as in like a fire, not thinking quenched it like a thirst, but it's like, not that you satisfied it, it's that you snuffed it out. The opportunity for abundance was in front of you and you snuffed it out. And so anyway, that we don't try to grab the fruit before it's ripe. I've told my friends this too. The whole thing with patience and waiting and in due season is, it's one thing when you're waiting and waiting for the fruit to come, but the hardest, most tempting part is probably when the fruit is coming, but it's not ripe yet. You see the fruit, but you can't take a bite yet. It's not ripe, right? The banana's coming in, but it's still green. It's not yellow yet. And so you see it. And again, you would think that this is when we would have the most faith. We'd be like, oh my gosh, it's here. The banana's here. And rather than waiting for it, I even think of an apple, right? It's like this yellowy green, and let's say not green apples, because obviously there are green apples and stuff too. But it's got to become red. It's got to complete itself. And we try to jump to things and get to the end before they're ready. And there's so much to teach about that. But so anyway, which one are you? Look at your life. And I know that there's going to be certain areas that you can think of where you're not getting the outcome you want. And it's because you're one of the 3 seeds in that area. Either that area, you don't even let God get started. You have completely taken the reins. Like you do not hear what he has to say about that topic. Or you let God help a little bit and it gives you hope to like get excited, but then you still try to do it your own way. And you have no depth in your roots. Like when God's way has any adversity, you go back to your own way rather than realizing your way has adversity too. But it's like his way, rather than getting through those tests, you bail. Or is it that you let God get you far enough to where you start to see success and then you take the reins? So just think about that, because those are the areas where you're failing, areas where you do not have abundance. You do not have 30, 60, 100 fold. You have not multiplied and been fruitful in those areas. You don't have the outcome you want. You are not going to just be able to change the outcome doing it the way you're doing it. You've got to get to the root of the problem and figure out where you're getting choked out. Which seed are you? Do you have shallow roots? Are you getting choked because the comfort, or are you just not even obeying at all? It's going to be one of those. Okay. And so then ask yourself, how can you be more intentional about receiving and applying God's word in your daily life? So all the things you think you want, all the decisions that you're making, that there's no independence in those decisions. You don't pick and choose certain things you want to ask God about, and then other things you take your own advice and your own counsel. But how do you include him and apply what he says is the right way, his order, right? His truth. How do you receive it in your heart, right? Have an open heart and apply it, right? Endure it, witness it unfold in your own life. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of glory, is we're experiencing it. We are witnessing it unfold in your life, but you have got to let it unfold, which means you don't rush ahead. Let it unfold, and then also step back and witness it. Watch what he is doing. Let him accomplish. You do not have to be the one to do it. You just know what is true. The truth will happen, and follow it. But so, how can you be more intentional about receiving and applying God's word to your daily life? This is why we do this Bible study. It is about life application. This is not just once a week. This is not just when you're in the middle of an issue or a problem. This is daily life. Every single day you are yielded. The tree never stops growing. The tree doesn't have certain days of the week that it starts to grow and then other days that it just doesn't. Growing is perpetual. It is constant. It is always. You are always growing. This is a good way to put it. The other seeds are falling away. And that's why I think the third is the hardest, because you're almost there and then you still fall away. And that feels like the most sunk cost, because you have invested the most. You have gotten so close. You're almost there and then you fall away. So you actually have the most to lose. And you were almost there. And so it's like you've wasted the most time and energy. And then it's hard because you've convinced yourself it doesn't work, because you're like, I did it and it didn't work. And it's like, no, you didn't get to the breaking point. You didn't get to the point of breakthrough. You almost did, right? You were 90% there. You were almost there. So it's like, this is why all in is so important, because the worst thing to be is 99% in. Because if you're withholding anything, it's like, you feel what it's like to give a lot. You feel what it's like to give almost everything that you have. So in one sense, it feels like you gave everything you have. You almost did. You gave more than most. You gave a lot, but you still didn't give enough. You didn't give all. All is all. And so to withhold anything, because you're going to have the same outcome, right? The person that doesn't even let it take root at all has the same outcome as the person that gets 99% of the way there. I've said this before with like shooting a basketball goal. If you make a 99% goal, the scoreboard still says 0, because guess what? It didn't go in. It either goes in or it doesn't. And so it is so much more frustrating to be the person that almost got the goal and didn't, because you have the same outcome as the person that didn't even shoot the ball. Wow, that's a word right there. You have the same outcome. You failed just like the person that didn't even shoot the ball. But you're more defeated because you think, what's the point? What was the point of even trying, right? And you start to have that mindset. I gave it my all and I didn't get there. But it's a lie, because you didn't give it your all. If you give it your all, trust is 100%. If you give God 100% of your trust, you don't withhold in any area, then you will have the fruit. You will break through to the other side, right? So falling away because of the things of the world. And so are there any distractions in your life that hinder your spiritual growth? And even just your relationship with money. Are you the person that worries and has a scarcity mindset that there's not enough money and that you need to hoard and you need to, you know, I guess just like strive and just that you, again, are worried you don't see God as a provider. You think it's about your control, your own security. Do you worry about money, or do you have a relationship with money where you're indulgent, right? You spend, you overindulge, you're excessive, right? It's like lustful, gluttonous, basically, where you're insatiable and you're loving the pleasures of money. So either of those, right? What is your relationship with money? And go back to Matthew 6, right? You cannot serve God and money. And what I love is about the truly wealthy people say, either master money or money will master you, right? You either work for money, like money's your boss, or you make money work for you. Money is a tool. And I love that God is saying, like, you work for me. I am your Lord. I am your boss. I am your master. I have the instructions and the guide, and money is a tool that I give you. But if you make money your God, if you make money your boss and your master, then you're trapped by it. You're enslaved by it, just like everything else with the flesh. You become enslaved by it. So are there distractions in your life that are hindering your spiritual growth? Distractions is a big one these days. We get so distracted and filled up with other stuff. And how can you refocus on God? And so when I talk about prayer, pros proshukamai, to be in the presence of God, to be face to face with God, right? That his face is turned toward us. We realize there is a face, there is an image of God, and there's even Jesus, right? God revealed, but that we draw near to him, toward him. We interact with him. We initiate, he initiates. There's this exchange that goes on, this call and response that goes on, but that you can focus on him. You can literally lock eyes with him, eye contact, be fixed on him, seek first the kingdom, right? Get your aim right. Get your target right, your focus right, your aim right. What are you focused on? Because distractions mean you're not focused. So how can you refocus on God? How can you seek him, look for him, find him, aim at him, so that you aren't led astray by distractions? And the example I used the other day too was like, if you have a GPS system, you are focused on the next street you're supposed to turn on, right? So if it says in 3.2 miles, turn right on Henderson Drive. So you're just driving past and you're looking for Henderson, but you also know that because it's 3 miles ahead that like none of these roads you're passing right now are any of them. Like you don't even have to, so you're focused on where you're going. You don't look at every single street you're passing and be like, is it that one? Is it that one? Is that one? Right? That's distraction. Is it's like, oh, and then you become a busybody and you turn down every street and you're just wasting time. That's what it's like versus when you know your aim, you know where you're going, you pass all the other streets and they don't even bother you. They don't need any time, any energy, any thought, right? You don't give them attention. You don't give attention to every street you're passing. You give attention to the street that you're looking for, the street that you're on. And so that is what it's like to have aim. That is what it's like to seek first the kingdom. I feel like that is a great way to see it. Okay, so Jesus talked about how we don't hide our light, how literally the light is made for others to be able to see. It says you put a light on a table so that others can see, right? It lights up the room. And so how can you be a light in your friendships, your family, right? Your workplace? How can you be a light? And what does that mean? Again, like, just like I said, us being love, that hate is just a void, right? It's the absence of love. It is 0% love. That hate is not an actual entity. It doesn't take up any space. It's the opposite of taking up space. It's an emptiness, like an empty cup, an empty glass. And how love is a presence. So love is what can fill that glass. So anytime you see hate, it is basically it's like asking to be filled, right? Anything empty is asking to be filled, is able to be filled. So when you walk into a room or when you're in a conversation and there's hate, it is asking to be filled with love. So same, if you are light, it's like you're a presence. Darkness is not an entity. It's the absence of, it's 0%. So anyone that is in darkness is just space that is begging to be filled with light. It's available. They want to see a light. They want a light at the end of the tunnel. They want hope. And so you can be that hope, right? You can be that testimony. You can be that example. You can be the one that's bringing kindness and truth and all those things, because it's what helps someone else focus now. If you are a beacon of light, now people can see that there's a way out, right? You are, it's like a call. It's calling them higher. It's allowing them to know that there's another way. And so how can you be a light? How can you shine your light? And rather than dim your light, I struggled with this for a while. I used to think I didn't like, well, at first I thought all the attention that I got, I sought it for vainglory. I was like, I like the attention for me. I want attention. And I would try to get attention in rooms. And then I realized like that was my pride. And so I started to pull away and learned what it was like to be hidden and to be overlooked and to appreciate that, because I was like, people who see me and value me, right? There's not this me trying to get attention. It's like there will be things that I bring of value that get me attention. And so then I flipped it and it became the opposite of, I didn't like going into rooms and being a light because I didn't want attention on me. I didn't want, in my pride now I was hiding basically. Like I thought, I don't want people to see me. I've gotten so used to hiding now and being hidden that I don't want to draw attention to myself. But you realize like when it's for the Lord, you're drawing attention to him. And so to even step out of your hiding and not dim your light and not be afraid to go into a room and be light, be lit up, because people are looking for light, and that you can bring that. It's just your heart changes and you stop taking credit for it like it's your own self shining. And you realize he is the source of light. I've said this before too, of like the difference between something shiny, like metal, that's reflecting light versus something that is a source of light. And so the Lord is a source of light. And so when he is in us, it's like the source, like a light bulb. It's like the source is shining through us versus bouncing off like a fake light, like a reflection or whatever. And so anyway, just letting him shine through you, which again means you being open and yielded and surrendered and letting all the dark places in you get lit up first, so that then light is flowing through you and back out. Okay, Jesus says that, like those who have more will be given and those who don't have more will be taken. This says, it phrases it differently. This says, Jesus said, those who listen to him will be given more understanding. So that's kind of cool too. I guess I didn't reference that in the Bible study. I talked about how the metaphor used or the example used was about strength, and how strength is like the more strength you build, then the more strength you have. It's like the stronger you are. But like if you aren't building strength, you're actually growing in weakness. And so it's like you're decreasing or you're increasing. So like the more you increase, the more you have, but then the more you decrease, the more of that you have, the more weakness you have. But it was in reference to understanding. So it's like the more you listen and understand, then the more understanding you will have. And the less you listen and like understand, the less understanding you will have. It's like, again, obviously but it's just profound. It's just cool that that's the way that it is. There's no middle, there's no pause button on it. And so even what you think you have, like when you are ignorant, when you do not have wisdom and understanding, you actually become foolish. Like there's no, oh, like I don't want to get wise today, but I also don't want to be foolish. Like you can't just stay in the middle and be like, I don't want to learn anymore. Like learning means I have to get smarter. And you're like, I don't want to get smarter. I don't want to get wiser. But then you would never, just choose to be foolish. But it's like, that's the consequence. If you're not constantly learning, if you're not getting wiser, then you are becoming more foolish. It's just the consequence of it. So I think that's a cool thing to point out. So anyway, that you'll gain understanding or you'll lose understanding. And so how can you actively listen and apply his teaching? So it's back to application. But first, like we've said, with obedience and disobedience, it comes from hearing. You've got to hear it first. And so you're reading the word, right? You're praying, you're letting the Lord talk to you. Even in prayer time, right? It's like we read to hear what the Lord's teaching, but also in prayer, you can even be silent and let the Lord talk to you. Like, what is he revealing to you? But how can you personally be more active in listening? I guess it's like be more hungry. Maybe write down, do I want to grow in wisdom? Yes or no, right? Like, do I want to learn? Or if I choose to not grow in wisdom, then I get more foolish every day. Like that is the side effect. So do I want to grow in wisdom or do I want to grow in foolishness? And pick one. And if you want to grow in wisdom, then realize that means on a daily basis that you are constantly seeking, searching for wisdom, that you are spending time with the Lord, letting him speak to you, letting him guide you, letting him increase your wisdom. It's like going to the gym. It's like the spiritual gym. Again, if you don't go build the muscles, you're going to lose the muscles. And so how can you build those spiritual muscles? By being hungry, genuinely saying, I don't want to be a fool, so I will ask for wisdom constantly, because there's two ways to handle a situation. You're either going to handle it with wisdom, you're going to handle it foolishly. And you might be thinking, again, even if you don't handle a situation wise, that there's another option, and there's not another option. You're either handling all of your situations with wisdom or you're handling them with foolishness. And so I would think you'd want to be the person where it's like, I don't want to handle any of them foolishly, right? Okay, then the disciples in the storm, right? How they freaked out and they pre-declared, just like with the next story of Jairus and how people were pre-declaring death over her, and if she wasn't dead yet, they're pre-declaring we're going to drown, even though they weren't even in the water, like they weren't even drowning, right? The boat wasn't sunk. It's not like they're swimming in the water. They're in the boat still. And their fear is declaring something and causing them to speak that over their life, right? So do you ever do that? And how can you stop it? How can you take your thoughts captive before they become your words? But think, do you do that? That when you're afraid of something, you start speaking the conclusion. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The thing you're afraid is going to happen is what you speak. Rather than speaking the thing you hope happens, you speak the thing you're afraid. And that just doesn't make sense. Why would you speak the outcome that you're afraid of? Rather than saying, Lord, I'm afraid that this outcome is going to happen, but I believe, maybe you throw it in there with then your confidence of the hope of the positive outcome. But so many of us just quickly jump to us speaking the negative outcome, the one outcome we actually don't want to happen, the worst case scenario, right? We go to the worst case scenario and we actually speak it. Why would you speak that? And so Jesus rebuked the wind and the waves. But what storms in your life are causing fear? Or I would even say, how do you handle the storms? Because this goes back to if you've built your house on a firm foundation or on sand, because the house on a firm foundation withstands the storm. He says the torrents came, right? The torrential rain. Or is your house built on sand? Because if it's built on sand, then it won't. Like you will be afraid of the storm. And God says the storms are coming. The whole point of that parable is both houses have a storm come. But one house is safe in the storm and the other's not safe in the storm. So he's not saying the storms are going to not come. He's saying the storms are coming. Are you prepared? Have you built your house? Is your house in order? And so, how do you handle storms? Whether you have just come out of a storm, or you're in the middle of a storm, or you're heading into a storm, right? Check your house. Are you prepared for the storm? Will you have faith in the storm? And the thing about storms is they're always the area that we don't want them to come in, right? Like you might be like, I wouldn't care if something happened to my job. I wouldn't care if something happened to my this or that. And then it's like the one area though that you are afraid. Like if something happened in this area though, it would really rock the boat, right? Like I would be panicking. That's the one area then where technically like a storm is actually going to come because you've already identified it. You've identified that any growth and change in that area is going to feel like a storm to you. And it's a place that you don't want to lose control. And the Lord is showing He is the one in control of all areas. We don't get, and so the ones that we try to control are going to be the ones that get shook because He's going to get our grip off of them and show you're not in control of this one. Right? So what's going to have to happen for us to realize we're not in control? And that's why it's so much easier to just shake your hands off it sooner than later. But so how do you handle storms? And do you fear like they do? Do you start to speak declarations over it of the worst thing is going to happen? And how can you change that? How can you prepare yourself to practice? First of all, prepare yourself by having your foundation, your confidence in the Lord, but also practicing mindfulness of taking your thoughts captive before you speak over a situation, what you think the outcome is going to be, and stop speaking the worst case scenario. So even right now, whatever it is in your life you're afraid of, write down what's the worst case scenario. And then how can you rephrase that to be a statement of faith? Maybe practice that every time you have a worst case scenario, that before you speak it, you turn it into a prayer or you turn it into a statement of faith rather than fear. Right? Because then Jesus says, where is your faith? Right? That when we're tested, that's when we're proving our faith. That's when our response is to be faith. Like anytime that fear comes up, it should be you realizing this was an opportunity for you to choose fear or faith. It is you being challenged. It is you having a test. And are you going to choose fear or faith? So every time fear comes up, rather than justifying it and being like, well, this one is scary. Fear should indicate to you that this was an opportunity for faith also, or is an opportunity for faith. But will you pivot it, right? So the way you're responding to the test, is it fear or is it faith? And what else? It's like, God has revealed Himself. God has done enough to build confidence. And maybe you can even ask, right? Him for more, like let faith rise up in me. Because it's like, what else more can He do for you to put your confidence in Him? And so if you do have fear, that should be you telling yourself, I'm not as confident in the Lord as I say that I am. And so where are you putting your trust, right? Where is your faith? If it's not in God, where is your faith? What are you putting your faith in? What are you putting your trust in? And how can you, like I've said before, faith literally means that God gives us confidence in Himself. We don't come up with confidence on our own. We don't muster up confidence in God. He gives it to us because of His faithfulness, because of everything He's done. So how can you maybe though practically write down maybe the things He's done in your life that prove His faithfulness, or the things like actually be in tune, actually acknowledge things that He's done that would build your confidence in Him, right? Even if it is things of like that He created the earth and that we have a perfect design and that we are able to communicate with Him and that He has sustained us through everything so far, and how He does, provide in whatever way. Like the things where it's like, if you write them down and you sit there and you look and you can ask yourself, why am I not confident in Him? Right? Like what is getting in my way of why I'm not confident in Him and I don't trust Him? Because that's something you need to work through, right? Is how you can trust the Lord. Okay, so then the demons, right? It actually makes me think about when I mentioned to Mary Magdalene and her 7 demons. And so even just you, as you're healing in layers, what are you healing right now? And realize that your whole lifelong journey is not going to be you healing this one thing. When you heal this one thing, it's going to reveal things underneath it. But there's more things to work on. So let yourself heal. Quit identifying with your misery, with this one thing you went through. Because when you heal from that, you're going to find that there's more layers of healing to go through. And so you're just like holding yourself back from moving forward with more healing. It's not like and sometimes that's what we're afraid of. We're afraid of actually being healed because then we don't have an excuse for all our stuff. It's like, that was me. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's like you imagine this life, but then it's almost like you don't think it's possible. It's too good to be true. You don't know if you deserve it. Like, what is freedom even like? Like, is it even real? All you know is carrying around your baggage with you. And if you're free from it, then what? Do you lose your personality? Do you lose, again, your excuses? And so we kind of hold on to these things because it's comfortable. But anyway, how she had these layers. And so you won't even know the layers underneath. I can't even say write down the layers because it's like you won't know the layers underneath until you heal the layer that you're on right now. But what's the first thing that comes to mind? The loudest thing. That's going to be the first thing to address. You won't be able to even see the others. You can't even hear the others because there's some area in your life that is the loudest thing you're dealing with, the loudest thing you're wrestling with. So address that one first, just one at a time. Address that one first. And as you address it, then you'll move on to the next one. Just keep writing it down. What's the loudest thing you're struggling with? But how then he met the guy that also had a lot of demons. And write the voices in his head. So just how can you, when you have any voices in your head that hate you and that go against you and that self-loathe you, know that that's not the Lord, right? That you do not believe any words, thoughts that come into your mind that are against you, that hate you, that try to get you to quit, that try to get you to forfeit, that try to get you to take yourself out of your race, that try to get you to take yourself out of enduring and out of your purpose. Like you're almost there, right? So any voice that tells you to quit is not the Lord. But so the areas of your life, like I said, that you need Jesus to heal you and bring freedom. And then after he was healed, Jesus sent him and said, go tell people. And so how can you share your testimony, what Jesus has done in your life with other people? And so realizing that we all have a testimony, it's like your testimony is going to keep growing because he's going to do more new things. But you don't have to think like, oh, I don't have this huge testimony list of things he's done. Even the one thing he did, that one time he provided, that one time he helped you overcome your anxiety, that one time he reconciled that friendship, whatever it is, there is someone going through that right now. There is someone who needs to hear that that's possible. And the thing he did in your life is the testimony, right? You might not have needed to overcome all the crazy things because you might not have had as deep of a rock bottom. My friend used to say that we all pick our level of rock bottom. Some of us go deeper than others. Some of us have literally had to break off 10 different chains of bondage, and some of us it's just one. But that one thing is relatable and people are going through it. So talk about it. Tell people what you overcame. Okay. And then the woman who, what I love too, and I forgot to talk about in the Bible study, was her desperation of like, she chased him down. She saw her opportunity. She seized the opportunity and chased him down. And it reminds me of what I said with the friends that were carrying the guy on the mat and they brought him before Jesus. It was like their desperation. They were going to get to Jesus. They wanted him. They needed him. Now is their opportunity. And so just chew on that. How can you seize opportunities when they come? Do you seize opportunities when they come? Do you think it's now or never? It's go time. Let's go. And get into that place of obedience and not hesitancy, right? God's here. He's moving. I feel the wind. It's rushing. I'm moving. I'm going with him, right? And I'm ready. I'm hungry enough. I want it. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm pushing my way up to the front. Now's my time, right? But how she touched him and then he was like, it was not just my power. My power is always available. And all these people are touching me and none of them are taking my power because they don't want they're not even asking. Like, right. It makes me think of like, you could get a hug from someone at any point in time, but do you ask for a hug? Right? Hugs are available. Or if you go hug someone and then they hug you back, but it's like the reception of it, right? And so, right? Is there any area in your life where you need to take a step of faith? Or just in general, do you take steps of faith? Like something big that you're asking for, something that you need from Jesus. And rather than withholding it from God, that you ask him, you're bold, you come before him and you say, I want to receive this thing. Help me receive this thing, but also help me receive this thing, and that it's not a burden, it's a blessing. And that's where the Lord will then refine you, and he will prepare you. And you will go through a season of, rather than calling it a waiting season, call it a preparation season and a season of equipping you. He will prepare you for the thing that you're praying for so that it's a blessing and not a burden. So there might be something you're asking for and you say, Lord, I want this thing. I know it's big to ask, and he has every intention of giving it to you. But he doesn't just hand it to you right here and now, right? If you're 8 years old, he's not going to hand you keys to the car. But he's like, let's spend some time getting ready and I'll absolutely give you one, right? So it's like that, knowing you're asking for something, and in due time, at the appointed time, in due season, it's there for you. But then the Lord's going to also work with you and prepare you for the thing that you're praying for, right? We say, I want my future spouse. And then we hope that tomorrow that person shows up. And what if the Lord's like, oh, okay, you want a future spouse? Absolutely. We got a lot of work to do in your heart and in your selfishness before we bind you to another person. So let's do that. Let's have fun. Let's have a season of shedding, a season of being refined by fire and testing and all the stuff so that you can have the thing you're praying for. So it's like seeing it like that, but you taking a step of faith and reaching out with expectation, reaching out to touch Jesus, knowing the power is available. His power is available to you. Do you receive it? Do you want it? Do you do anything about it? Even here and now with resurrection power, you have the Holy Spirit. You're born again. What are you doing about it? What are you doing with all that power you have? Do you act like a son of God, or do you act like an orphan? Because God has adopted you, but are you still acting like an orphan, right? So you receiving and taking the step of faith and realizing exactly who you are and living like you know who you are. And I said too about how, in that he talks about her faith. I mean, even with the disciples, he says, where is your faith? And then with this woman, he's like, it is your faith that made you well, right? And Jesus keeps talking about, you got to believe, you got to have faith. That's your part. That's your participation in this whole thing. And so when he told Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe, right? If you believe, I can do big things, but you got to believe, right? And so fear and how it affects our faith, negative self-talk and how it affects our faith, right? And so I guess this is kind of similar. We already talked about it. It says, how can you replace fear with trust? But it's the same thing. It just shows, fear just shows you don't trust. So this is all coming down to the same thing of, what do you trust? But I love this. Do you believe? Do you believe what you say you believe? And again, it'll be proven when tested. So love tests. Love that tests are opportunities for you to prove that you believe what you say you believe. You cannot trick anyone. You cannot trick God. Your belief will make itself evident. So I would spend some time believing. I would spend some time working on making sure you believe truth and not lies. What do you believe? Do you believe that God cares? Do you believe that he will provide in your situation? Do you believe that he is a healer? You need to get to the root of the problem. And what is it that you don't believe? Or what is it that you might believe wrongly? Do you believe he's going to leave you? Do you believe he's going to hurt you? Do you believe, right? What are you believing that's wrong? And so just check in on that. What is it that you're believing? Because your beliefs are the root of it all. Do you believe that God is who he says he is? And maybe you need to know who he says he is. Who does he say he is? Right? How does he feel about you? But just figuring that out. What do you actually believe? Do you believe he's for you? Do you believe he's against you? Do you believe you'll be fruitful when you go his way? Or do you believe you'll be fruitful when you go your own way? Because if you believe you'll be fruitful when you go your own way, you're believing a lie. And so then we've got to get back to, what do we believe and why, and where do we fix our beliefs? Where do we unlearn some of the things we learned along the way? And like I said, the people that were speaking over Jairus, the fact that they were speaking into declaration, or they were declaring an end, an outcome. And so, have you experienced or faced discouragement from others while you were trusting God? And just see that as a test. You believe God's going to show up, and then other people start yapping in your ear stuff that makes you doubt. It makes you be like, oh, maybe not. Maybe like the gaslighting, right? You're like, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am believing something too big. And so, do other people ever speak over your situations when you were being hopeful and you were being faithful, and then their doubt creeps in? right? Discouragement from others. Rather than them encouraging you, they're discouraging you. Yeah, that seems a little big. David and Goliath, if someone was like, yeah, David, the odds aren't really good. You probably shouldn't do it. And David was like, I don't care what any of you say. It's me and God. And God's calling me out and I can do it and I will do it with him. But he didn't even need the opinions of others and the voices of others. But it is hard when others are speaking over you. It's like I said, to take your own thoughts captive, your own negative self-talk is hard enough, let alone when other people are speaking it and you have to say, I'm not listening to you. I serve a God that does things against all odds. The odds are really, really good when they're not in my favor. Because then he gets to show up and get the glory. Right? So when others discourage you, and how do you respond? Right? Do you give in? Do you yield? Do you let them win? Do you back out and say, maybe I will? Like, do you surrender your own promise? Do you forfeit? That's part of the forfeiture. That's why I said when the enemy can't make you quit, he just gets you to want to quit, and you hand over the keys and you say, I'm done, I'm out, I drop out of the race. That's what discouragement is. They're trying to get you to drop out of the race. So how do you respond? Do you drop out of the race? Or do you stand firm in your faith and stand against them and speak truth? Do you pray? Do you worship? Do you say, God's going to get the glory? You are not going to stand in my way. Right? I think that is all that we have for today. So Luke chapter 8, let's go. Every day is so good. I love the word, and I hope that you guys are just like learning so much, and this is opening your heart. If anything, it's not even just about learning, it's about being transformed, right? That your minds are renewed, your hearts are healed, and your lives are transformed. In Jesus' name.